I appreciate you taking the time. John was telling me that you are the OG guy in the group that is running the show with Isochain. So I appreciate you hopping on the call to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Honestly, I've just been a fan of it since the beginning. So I always thought it was interesting. And yeah, I guess this is where we're at.
I just want to hear about a little bit of your background with fitness and getting so jacked. It's intimidating, man.
So my background, so I started lifting in 2009. It started with just a simple Planet Fitness membership and just some basic consistency, working out every other day with the upper lower split. And some things started happening and took it a step further with bro splits and learning more, eventually getting certified in 2016.
So what do you kind of do on a day-to-day basis now, like for as far as fitness goes?
So I lift about 4 to 5 times a week. I do Isochain 6 to 7 times a week. And other than that, I'm training Monday through Friday, either online, virtual, or I'm training in person.
So back to like when you first started lifting and kind of the beginning of it, what were the things that you were doing at that time versus other than the upper lower split? What was kind of going on for the first couple of years that you were lifting?
Honestly, nothing really. I would just call it ignorance on fire, just asking people that were jacked what they were doing, copying them. Some of the veterans in the gym would take notice and then they'd come and help me out. I feel like this might be the story of many people, but I feel like I found one isometric exercise by accident, which was the hyperextension and then just holding it for time, which made my lower back incredibly strong. But then I stopped doing it. That was so dumb. If I had just known and I sacrificed it for deadlift, which is still good. Deadlift is amazing, but if I had just known, I would have done both.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so what was kind of the process of going into Isometrics after that? Was it just to get stronger? Or was it more like the injury prevention thing, or was it just trying to hit different muscle fibers and different types of exercises, or just curiosity?
It was to get stronger. To be honest, I've always had an interest in this type of strength, particularly like the whole farmer strength thing, because I feel like it wasn't common, but I don't know, maybe you've seen this. I feel like there are just outliers out there that just don't have the muscle mass, but they just have the strength. And you're just like, well, this just defies all the things that we just learned. So how are they able to do that? So that just kind of got me interested. And so while I started doing the research, this was around 2017, I started noticing that the word isometric came up more often than usual. And that's when I started learning about the differences between yielding isometrics, which pretty much everybody knows those holds, and overcoming isometrics, the weird looking one that Bruce Lee was doing. And I was like, I think there's a connection here. Injury prevention was a close second though also.
Have you been lifting that much? Like, because now you're doing kind of more of the 6-7 days a week, at least some type of exercise. Were you doing that right out of the gate, or is it something you kind of built up to over time?
Built up to over time. I was 3 to 4 times a week. So in the beginning, for the first 1.5 to 2 years, I was literally every other day consistently.
Okay. And then when you're doing isometrics and getting into that world of things, what made you like find the Isochain? Before you even found it, what was kind of leading up to that? Were you trying different workout programs and learning from certain people that kind of put you onto that style of training? Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, Jeff Lindsay, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that name, has a YouTube channel, but he also had this article that I almost referred to religiously. And he mentioned overcoming isometrics, which led to checking out Bruce Lee's isometric routine, which, I saw was a chain and bar style of training. So I actually took that and I did it like in between clients in the morning with a power rack. And I was like, oh, is that? Cause I always wondered, I'm like, why do the power rack holes? Why are they like that? I mean, we're just going to do squats and deads and bench anyway. Like, I don't understand. And then they were going over the original purpose. And I was like, oh, wow, that makes sense. And then I did. And I was like, oh, wow, this is hard, But I eventually stopped doing it because I just didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't know if it was working. I felt a little stronger, but I wasn't sticking with it long enough for there to be like any results or anything. So that's on me.
And then when you first saw the Isochain, what was kind of the process of being like, oh, like, did that kind of remind you of what you were doing, or why did you end up buying the Isochain in the first place?
Yeah, it did remind me of that. And I think that Paul Wade and DragonDoor and John putting Bruce Lee on there was very smart. And it was true, but that actually got me in the door. And I was like, oh, wow, that reminds me of that article I read a couple years ago. And so this was, right smack in the middle of COVID the first year. So I went and saw the price tag and I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I went and made my own for about $45. And that time I did notice a difference. And actually, after about 3 months, I ended up bending the bar that I bought. And I'm just like, holy crap, so let me go buy this. So I was just like, and it was definitely an iffy buy because, I mean, I'm sure that if somebody didn't have an online establishment set up, that being a personal trainer at that time in the world was very scary and sketchy time to be in. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to go ahead and purchase it. And I waited for what felt like 4 years, but 4 months later it came.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. The early days. So going back to kind of more of your background and stuff, what was the process of personal training like throughout the whole career? I kind of want just some info of like when you're saying that it was a little iffy, probably financially, I'm assuming you're talking about. What was your process of getting started there, and how did it progress over the years
with personal training?
Yeah.
So actually, used to work front desk at a Planet Fitness, and over the course of years, consistent, people would start asking me about training. And at the time, I don't know how the infrastructure is now, but they had a assigned trainer. So our protocol was if anybody asked us for training, we would just refer them to a trainer. So I did, and they said, hey, listen, with all due respect, I'm not going to ask that guy. I'd rather ask you. And I was just like, okay, you said it, not me. But so they asked me. So it was a young guy. He was looking to get into a college for football. And he was like, hey, listen, I would really like a leg program. Is there anything that you can do to help me out? Can you come up with a program? And I was like, okay, do this, and this. And he was like, oh, wow, thanks. And dude, when I tell you he was out of sight, out of mind, I mean, I go on without throughout my life. He comes around next year. I didn't recognize him at first. He's like, hey, what's going on? I'm just like, hey, how's it going, dude? And he's just like, do you remember? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. And he reminds me. And he was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I did the leg program you said, and I got in. I really want to thank you. I was like, oh, crap.
That's
so
crazy.
Like that got me thinking. I was like, oh, well, that felt really good. Let me maybe look into this. So that was the seed that was planted. This was, oh my God, like early 2010s. So that's when I really started looking into it. A couple years later, then I was like, all right, it's time to, take it seriously and go ahead and get this cert.
Yeah. What were kind of the most difficult parts of doing that career in general over the years?
It really wasn't, I don't know, difficult. I don't think. I would say that the physique definitely helped in the difficulty curve, but it is what it is. It's just my personal, I never really struggled from the beginning up till now. I just kind of naturally through referrals and getting people results, built my business up to what it is today.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you are already in the gym a lot, love what you do, it's kind of, and then if you got the physique to back it up, clients will come and stuff. So,
yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Sweet. Awesome. So for Isochain, what type of exercises are you doing now for your program? I'm assuming pretty much everything if you're doing 6 days a week.
I pretty much am just doing Bruce Lee's routine right now on the Isochain. I feel like that's a nice all-arounder right now. I'm just coming off of a surgery. I had just had a appendectomy surgery in the middle of June. So I couldn't do anything. So I lost a lot. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just do his? I like the way it is. It's just a 1x6. So it takes me 7 minutes to go through it. Wow, right? Yeah. And I'm just off to whatever I need to do for the day. Numbers are going up already. Today is day 11 that I'm going to do it, and the numbers are up. So of course, I'm supplementing that with resistance training because I don't want to just do that. I want to complement that with other forms of training as well, which is what I like to. I like to mix them both up. But what I find interesting is that they do springboard off the top of each other, the results, which is insane. But yeah, the Bruce Lee routine right now is absolutely incredible for me. 1 by
That's
6,
good.
7 minutes, done.
What would you kind of recommend for someone in that zone who's just starting out using Isochain?
I'd actually recommend them to do the Bruce Lee one because it's so quick. As long as they're tracking their numbers each day, they're getting an accurate representation of their strength going up literally on a daily basis without it taking too much time. There are 4 programs that come with the Isochain, very eloquently named beginner program A, B, C, and D.
Yep.
but they might take a little bit longer than what someone who's brand new would be willing to take, even despite the name being a beginner program. It's great programs, but I probably recommend them to do that because it's short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm kind of curious, like right before you bought the Isochain, we talked about it a bit, but like when you made the decision to buy it and get into Isometrics, what were kind of the problems you were having as far as your own fitness? Was it more of a, like, of course you wanted to get stronger and stuff. Were you finding that traditional weightlifting, more of the free weights, barbell stuff was just not working quite as well since you had been doing it for so long? And was Isometric like a new avenue that you took because of that?
I wouldn't say the first, definitely the second though, but no, I was still progressively getting gains through the gym, although at that point it was definitely starting to slow up. Part of it was, like we had talked about earlier, injury prevention, but also because at that time, definitely not the case right now. At that time, I was pretty comfortable with what my size looked like. So I just wanted to focus on like that weird strength. Like I just wanted that weird strength. I was just like, I've decided, let's just add that little layer on top of it and just see where it goes from there. And what's interesting actually is right before I got the Isochain, I had naturally found myself working in the 3 to 5 rep range for strength. So I was kind of like a mini powerlifter, but already just by default. So I could tell like my mind was starting to shift towards that avenue anyway.
What have you noticed that's been the biggest difference since using the Isochain, whether it's strength or injury prevention? If it's any like big change, we'd love to kind of hear towards that.
The number one thing was my knees. I was pretty sure I was headed to surgery because my left knee, when I was demonstrating a basic body weight lunge for clients, I almost had to be like, oh, it's kind of, well, here, just do this. And I had them do it because when I came down in the motion, this is even a stationary lunge, not even talking about a forward or reverse. It felt like a lightning bolt came down into my left kneecap. And it was literally every time. It just felt like it was deteriorating. And I just couldn't do heavy legs anymore. My size was going down. Just like, dude, what do I do? So that the article really came at the right time. But yeah, so I was using the Isochain. It was literally just a few months and my knee pain was gone. And then unfortunately now with the surgery, it actually came back, but that's also even more proof that when I was doing it, it was gone because of the Isochain.
Dang, that's wild. That's super cool to hear. Yeah, just the little things of like Isometrics when you're not hammering it with motion all the time and you're just doing more of the stay in place type stuff. That's huge for injury.
Also, I didn't notice my lifts go up a lot. At first it seemed like it was negligible, but it was more of a slow drip. So it kind of just went like this, and then it just started to really ramp up as the time went on. I noticed that my dumbbell rows were starting to get incredibly, not easy, period, but easier. The deadlifts launch phase easier, squat form easier. Just overall, I would say the biggest boon was my overhead press.
Okay, cool. Yeah, dude, we'd love to, if you have time later this week or something, you can email me over those numbers. I'd love to see like how crazy it is, like going up in strength. And that's another thing too, is just the, not always like going up on the Isochain, but also like how it impacts those other movements is a big deal, because a lot of the big muscle development and strength will come from, as you know, things like overhead press. And if you can make that easier for yourself, like that's huge.
Right.
Dude, man, honestly, like after talking to you, so I'm working with DragonDoor. This is kind of not part of this little interview or whatever, but I am just started working with John at DragonDoor, and we're planning on just kind of getting the right marketing down for the product and making sure that we can kind of push it out to more people. On top of that, like in the long run, it'd be cool to kind of improve product development a little bit, because I know we've had some people that would love to see some strap innovation maybe, and I know that people have been switching it out, things with the batteries, all that good stuff. So I'm kind of planning on just going all in and trying to build the product up as much as possible and just improve it over time. But since you really kill it with a lot of the content, like posting and everything, we'd love to pay you at some point to do some video ads and do some cool interviews if you're down to continue working together.
Sure, I'd love to, man. I freaking love the Isochain, so I'm totally down.
That'd be awesome, man. Yeah, really appreciate it. Do you have anything else that you want to kind of go over as far as the product goes?
If there was anything else that I'd recommend, I would tell people over time, the biggest obstacle that I consistently have people run into is the price. COVID, I kind of understood because everything was questionable. Now, even though things aren't immaculate, but it is what it is, I still think that price is worth it. For one, the amount of money that other pieces of exercise equipment cost. So I have a belt squat in the other room that's like $800, power racks, $1,500, like for $499, what you get out of it, like just in the strength and injury prevention department alone is worth its weight in gold. And then you add the modes, and I just think that it's very reasonably priced. I think the only reason people gasp at the price is because they don't understand the value of it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you said that, because I've talked to John a little bit about it. I think, it's not being communicated properly of like, hey, this is it's a big deal for the fact that you're using it every day to fuel your whole workout routine and injury prevention and all this great stuff, especially for that demographic that's a little bit older, and that could be the only thing that they need to do. Like, people buy dumbbells and barbells for triple the price of that. So it's well worth it. I appreciate you taking the time to